Welcome back to the Teachers Playlist podcast, where I bring outstanding educators to the mic to share their experience, their insight, to in turn provide some momentum to those of you who are looking for some inspiration. And I think it's perfect as we are kind of considering heading back in September to our positions, that we welcome the lovely Dave Burgess to the forum. I'm just so pleased to have you, Dave. Dave Burgess is the New York Times bestselling author of Teach Like a Pirate and was a high school teacher for 17 years. We're going to talk about that. He is the president of Dave Burgess Consulting and disrupted during that time the publishing industry by releasing over 200 titles from innovative educators across a multitude of subjects. He currently lives in Vancouver, Washington. I had to look that up. And in April was inducted to the International Pirate Hall of Fame, which I also find fascinating. I'm so pleased to have you on our show to help our educators. Dave Burgess, welcome.
Jen, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. So happy to join you.
I'm so thrilled because I know Dave as the Teach Like a Pirate. That's how I know him. And I know a lot of my fellow educators here in BC and beyond know Dave that way. What I was hoping to do today is sort of access Dave's greatest hit. What is the disposition, the skill set, the sort of underlying theme of education that he brings forward to create an incredibly popular consulting agency. And we'll talk a little bit about how he actually uses his background as a very experienced teacher. So Dave, let's just get into it. Could you describe for us your educational background and how long you've been teaching?
Yeah, for sure. So I always tell people my gateway drug into teaching was I started as a basketball coach. So I was hired as a basketball coach before I even had a teaching credential. And I loved working with the kids so much. I decided that this is what I want to do, not just after school. This is what I want to do all day. And so I went back to night school, got a teaching credential, and started to teach at the high school where I was coaching. Eventually became so obsessed with teaching that I left the coaching behind and just focused on the teaching. But that was kind of how I got into education to begin with.
Wow. So as a coach.
As a
So
coach.
your
And,
gateway
and then I
drug, I
taught,
love it.
yeah, and then I taught for 17 years at West Hills High School in San Diego, California. And over the course of that 17 years is kind of where I honed, refined, and came up with the concepts behind Teach Like a Pirate. I started to speak about it long before there was a book. 5, 6, 7 years before there was a book, I was doing workshops and talking to educators about these ideas. And then finally in 2012, wrote the book, Teach Like a Pirate, and then eventually left the classroom and began to travel full time, doing the program and publishing and all that, which we can get into if you want to. But yeah, that's kind of where it all started from. It was from starting in coaching, then going into teaching, and then being in the classroom for 17 years.
There's a tremendous amount of validity to what you're talking about, because this is certainly not maybe what I think there's a view or a perception that, those who can't really, sort of hack it in the classroom, let's be a consultant. And, and this is not the case with you. And so when I did read your bio, I admit I was really astounded at the number of years you spent teaching, like in front of kids. Could you talk a little bit about why you think that might be important for consultants to have that kind of experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I love teaching. Yeah, right up to the very last day, I love teaching. And the reason I decided to leave was not because at any point did I not like teaching. I loved it. It was because I thought I had an opportunity to kind of amplify my message and to reach more people. And I got to this place, this kind of awkward place where I was having to turn down speaking engagements, turn down conferences that I wanted to go to and speak and spread my message. And also feeling like I was starting to begin to miss too many days with my kids. And so, I got to this point where kids were like, "Oh, you're going to be away again Friday." I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm missing too many days." And so I didn't think I was being my best self in the classroom, nor was I doing all that I could to really honor my message and to spread the message to the level I wanted to. And so I had to make a decision. And so I'd made a decision that I'm going to go out and speak to teachers full time. So that's kind of where it came from. But I do think the fact that I was in there for 17 years gives me, I guess we would call it street cred,
It
right?
does.
And I always tell people
Yes.
that these ideas uh, are drawn straight from my classroom. Like, for example, sometimes people will say to me, "Hey, how come this isn't in your book?" And they'll, maybe be some educational technology thing, or
Right.
maybe a project-based learning idea or something like that, which I don't discuss in my book. And I said, "Well, it's very simple why that's not in my book. It's not in my book because I wasn't very good at it. And I wanted my book to be written from a very authentic place. And so, if everything that you find in that book are things that I use successfully in my classroom in front of real kids, real
Yay.
lessons, real curriculum, right?
Woo.
And so I didn't want to come from some inauthentic place of saying like, "Oh yeah, here's how all these different ways you can use educational technology," which I wasn't using at the time. Now I've learned a lot about some of these things since then by
Right.
publishing other people, but at that time I could not write that book. And so everything that you see in my book is straight out of my classroom. That's what I tell people when I speak too. I say, "Listen, half this time that I'm speaking, you might think you're listening to a motivational speaker. But
Yeah.
the other half I'm just going to show you things straight out of my room and model and demonstrate these ideas as if you are the
Yes.
actual students in my class. I want you to feel what it's like to be drawn in by these ideas. So I'm actually going to take that lesson part that I did with kids for 17 years, and I'm going to do it for you. Even if you're in an auditorium of 1,000 people, I'm just going to teach this part of my lesson for you so you can
Oh,
see how this
wow.
works and how it draws you in."
So you tried it out in the classroom, and I like, and that again it lends validity, definitely. I'm also wondering, I noticed you use the term motivational speaker. I think that's an easy sort of thing to slip into for a lot of people is to try to be motivational and motivate teachers to feel good and just enjoy the classroom and here are the ways to take care of yourself emotionally and whatnot, and that's fine. But I still really firmly believe that when you offer teachers tools, tried, tested, practiced tools, and it is concrete, um, that's and tangible. That's what we're looking for. So
Right.
it's sort of like, and honestly, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're talking about all the time that's missing. I don't know if a poster is going to get me through next year. Like
Right.
I need ideas and I need tangible things. Lesson plans, like you said, and here's how it worked in my classroom. Here's how it can work with you. Um, so I guess my next question would be, what's your greatest hit? So I'm guessing I was thinking about it today while I was having a coffee. I thought, I think I know what he's going to say, but I don't always know what people are going to say, and I want to leave it as a surprise. So if you had to sort of maybe reduce isn't a great word, but come up with a theme. You're a history teacher. I'm sure you've looked at theme and those overarching concepts. What is it that you would say is your greatest hit that you have brought forward for the last, how many years then, Dave? You've taught for 17. How long have you been consulting?
Yeah. So the book I taught for 17 years. The book came out in
Yeah.
2012. I've been speaking about it
Okay.
ever since. And so,
Okay.
yeah, it's been, I've been in education now. I guess we're approaching almost 30 years. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a lot of time there that
yeah.
you've developed and moved and whatnot. But could you boil it down to a theme or a skill or a mindset for
Yeah,
us?
so I thought about this for a little bit, and there were several different angles that I could go at for it.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'll choose one that you weren't thinking about, but this is uh, what I'm going to choose for right now is something I call the concept of the third circle. Okay. And so I look at teaching
Okay.
as a triple Venn diagram. There are three interlocking
Mm,
circles, and we have to have all three to be our most powerful. And one of those circles I label as content. Okay. And we have to have that circle, or we're just entertainers or babysitters, right?
yep.
And like that's when in the book I said this kind of confrontational line. When I talked about some of the other stuff, like student engagement stuff in the book, I said, listen, I'm assuming that you're coming to this book knowing your content and being an expert in your content and in your curriculum. If you're not
Right.
an expert in your content and your curriculum, put this book down and go learn that.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
when you
wow.
know your content, now come back and pick this up, pick this book up, right?
I'm
And so
impressed.
yeah, so that's the content circle. But there's all sorts of ways you
Okay.
can learn your content. There's online places to learn content. There's books about content. There's professional development about content.
Yeah.
Lots of ways to learn content. Then there's a second circle that interlocks with that. I call it techniques and methods. And we have
Okay.
this whole toolbox of techniques and methods that we garner from our credential programs, from our colleagues, from professional development conferences, and lots of books have been written about the techniques and methods of teaching, right? But then there's
Yes.
this third circle that I think that people don't spend enough time talking about. And I have this zeal to go and travel and talk about. The third circle is what I label presentation. So yes, you know your content.
Oh.
Yeah, you have all these techniques and methods, but now how are you going to present it in such a way that it's engaging for kids? How are you going to present it in such a way that it's relevant for them? How are you going to
Oh,
present it in such
yeah.
a way that it draws them almost magically or magnetically into what you're doing in the rooms? That's the third circle of Teach Like a Pirate, right? And so like I drive teachers crazy when I work with them with lessons, Jen, because I
Yeah.
ask them so many questions. I'm like, hey, are the lights going to be on or off when the kids walk in for this one? What are you going to
Oh,
have written on your
I
board?
love it.
Do you have any props for this? Have you chosen a musical selection that might go with this? How are you going to set the mood for your classroom? What's the design, the interior design of your classroom going to look like to really emphasize this content or this part of your curriculum, right?
Wow.
Like, you know what are you going to say today that makes them excited about coming back tomorrow? Like, how are you going to build up that mystery, curiosity, buzz, anticipation, or as I call it in Teach Like a Pirate, preheat the grill? How are you going to preheat the grill, right?
Okay.
And then finally, teachers they're just like, wait, just stop. Like, I don't decide all that stuff. And I say, yes, you do. You do decide that stuff because the lights are either going to be on or off when they walk in tomorrow, right? So you
Yeah.
either decide that or you abdicate responsibility for that decision. And teachers like, oh my God, okay, yes, I decide that. And the lights are going to be on tomorrow when kids walk in. And and here's the thing, in
Yeah.
and of itself, these things seem so small, Jen, but they're not in and of themselves. They build and stack upon each other. And all these presentational decisions that we have every day, they could be haphazardly thrown together to create a threadbare blanket of boredom, or they could be intentionally woven into a beautiful, rich quilt of engagement, depending upon how you stitch it. So you want to control everything at your disposal to make school amazing for kids.
So just to, oh my gosh. So the third circle of
Presentation.
presentation.
So,
Okay.
so here's
Okay.
what
I'm just
happens.
remembering this. Okay. Yeah.
Let's say that teachers are collaborating.
Okay.
Almost always, if you go into a school,
Yeah.
they're going to be collaborating around their content,
Absolutely.
or they're going to be collaborating around technique and method that
Technique.
they're going to
Yeah.
use, instructional
Sure.
technique,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Pedagogy, which
Sure.
is they should be collaborating around those two things. But how much time do they ever spend collaborating around presentation? Like, how are we going to, okay, yeah,
No.
here's the technique we're going to use. Here's the content we're delivering. But
Oh.
hey, what could we do around how can we present this to them that would draw them in and make them wildly engaged by this? That's the concept behind Teach Like a Pirate.
Third circle of presentation. Okay, so I'm blown away. I would not have expected that, but okay. So my brain's going really kind of all jumbled now. So how would you say that relates to the theme of piracy? Like, does it fit in anywhere there with the theatrics or because I love theater. I've used theater to teach. I think
Mhm.
it's really important to set the stage, or so to speak, or to preheat the grill, as you said. Do you see that like fitting in thematically at all?
Yeah, and so like what I always tell people, because Teach Like a Pirate is a very strange name for a book, right? And it requires a little explanation.
Yeah, tell me.
There's a
Yeah.
curiosity factor behind that, right?
Yes, there
And
is.
so kind of my
Yes.
pitch on that for people is I say, like, this has nothing to do with wanting teachers to attack and rob ships at sea, right? This has nothing to do with the dictionary definition of a
No,
pirate, right?
no.
So it's just about embracing the spirit of a pirate. And to me, the
I love
spirit of a
it.
pirate is someone who's unconventional, someone who's willing to reject the status quo, someone who's willing to
Okay.
sail into uncharted waters with no guarantee of success, a risk taker, rebel, maverick in the classroom. So it's embracing that spirit of being a pirate. In addition to that, pirates are known for having hooks. And this is all about how you can hook students and draw them
Oh, I
almost
love it.
magically or magnetically into what
Okay.
you're doing in your rooms. So it's that kind of play on words of the pirate hook. And then in addition to that, so these are presentational hooks that you can add to your
Okay.
content and to your curriculum. That's the pirate tie into it, right?
That
And then
makes so much sense.
it's also an acronym. Teachers are obsessed with acronyms. I am too. And so
Yeah.
first thing I did, I turned the page sideways. I wrote PIRATE down the page, trying to
Yeah.
make an acronym. I knew I wanted to talk about passion and enthusiasm. There, the
Yes.
P and the E were sitting at the beginning and the ends of the word. And then I
Yeah.
knew I wanted to talk about building rapport with students as sort of being the heart of teaching. There, the R was sitting in the center. And so I never looked back. I created the pirate theme and acronym and the hooks and all these kind of things. And that became the concept behind what I was traveling and talking to teachers about.
This amazing. I love it. I love the third circle, a presentation. Is that correct? Did I say
Yep.
that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. So
And by the way,
awesome.
Jen, you would
Yeah.
probably, I know a little bit about your work, and you would probably want to add a fourth circle of assessment, right?
I probably would. And I
Yeah.
know that's where
Mhm.
it's going to go anyway. Because the next thing I'm going to
Mhm.
do is I'm going to add your book to my collection here. I'm going to read it. I was going to anyway. I just wanted so much to share what you had to say about your greatest hit and your themes with my fellow teachers because I knew that you'd be a great spokesperson to kind of get people fired up to go back. You know, we need momentum. We need to build some
Yeah.
momentum, and I love it. I was going to ask you if you're willing to give an example, which you probably do in your book, of how you've used presentation in your classroom. Like, what was the one thing that you remember out of all of the things that you've done in your classroom with your, again, high school students that really hooked them? Like, how did you
Yeah.
use presentation? I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, lots of choices for this one. But
Oh, yeah,
so one of the things that I tell people is, in a sense, I get paid to travel around and try to teach people to teach more like a kindergarten teacher. And so,
true.
like at some
I
point
got you on that.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, in some point in
Yeah.
education, people all of a sudden think that everything has to be very serious
Mm.
and you have to limit the fun factor. And all of a sudden it's less hands-on. There's less incorporation of art and music and all these things as you get higher and higher levels of school. And I'm coming in and saying like, no, no, no. You know why those things work in kindergarten is because they're powerful and they work all through every single grade level. And in fact, when you do it in high school, when you add these elements, it's actually more effective because they haven't seen it for so long, right? And so,
Oh my goodness.
like kids will, or sometimes a teacher will say, "Well, I don't think high school kids would buy into this kind of stuff. It's too silly for them." We're like,
Okay.
"Are you
I
kidding
would
me?
hear that too.
High school kids will eat this stuff up. They
Okay.
haven't been treated this way in a school system in a long time. They're
Give us an
excited. They're blown
example.
away. And
Okay.
so, okay, like I have a lunar landing lesson,
I
and
already love it. Okay, I'm in.
yeah, I mean, so what I want them to feel like they're in space. And so I have
Yes.
blacked out the room. I've taken all light out of the room. I've used
Yeah.
special covers to eliminate all light. I have accent lights when they come in. I have sound effects and music that seems very eerie
Oh.
and like, uh, we're talking to, and because it's the lunar landing, eventually there's going to be Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon is going to be playing. And there's going to be lasers. There's lasers even in this lesson, right? And so you might think, well, this is just about creating a show. No, it's about creating an atmosphere. It's about making kids like kind of disconnect from their everyday life, come into a classroom and really be immersed in some. The I of pirate, by the way, stands for immersion. How you're immersing yourself into
Oh.
what you're doing, but also immersing students into the curriculum. So I've used the interior design hook from Teach Like a Pirate by incorporating the environment. I've used the Mozart hook of music, the music that's being played, right? And I'm using all these
Oh,
different
wow.
hooks to create this. And plus, I've preheated the grill by talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks ahead of time, so that when they're coming on that day, they're excited. Like, it's lunar landing day. What's this going to be like? And I've told them like they're going to be going into outer space, and so there's this kind of anticipation. Again, mystery behind it, buzz. Like people are talking about it. Like, don't miss tomorrow. People change doctor's appointments because they don't want to miss something like this, right? And then I'm giving them I'm talking to them about I have video of the rockets taking off and all this kind of stuff like this. But then also I'm doing this thing which is an incorporation of what I call LCLs, which are life-changing lessons. So it's
Okay.
not just about the curriculum and content that you're delivering. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. But
Right.
below the surface is like we're embracing that mightier purpose of being a life changer. like having
Yes.
that life-changing role with students. And so how can we embed LCLs, life-changing lessons, embed that into our curriculum? And so for the lunar landing, there's several of them. Like, for example, I talked to them about different things, about like, when you see the Earth from space
Right.
and you see that like, oh my gosh, we are literally floating on a blue ball. We are hurtling through space on a blue ball, right? Like, this is insane that this is happening. And yet, what are we concerned with?
I
Petty
know.
differences with each other's religion, sexual preference,
Yes.
gender, or
That's what we're all arguing about.
yeah,
I
we're arguing about
know.
all
I
these little things, these
know.
minor things, these little like problems that we're having with each other. Do you understand we are floating on a blue ball through space? Like, we're like, this is life is a life is a miracle. Life is incredible. The world, like, every day, like, you should be ecstatic to be here. Like, this is, and so I'm kind of like trying to give them this paradigm shift of how to
Yeah.
look at the world, and this difference in nationality or race
Yeah.
between this person that lives in this country over here or the person that lives across the street from us. Like, how ridiculous is that we're concerned about that? Like, pull back and look at the Earth from space, and now, like, look at the ridiculousness of something like racism. It's like, it's just unbelievably ridiculous. And so, like, that's a life-changing lesson that I'm trying to
Yeah.
incorporate. I'm trying to show them about, like, hey, like, in the 60s, JFK said, we're going to go to the moon. We're going to walk on the moon, and we're going to do it this decade. He set this goal, this vision. And then
Not
with the
because it is easy,
collaboration, yeah, and then with the
because it is
collaboration of
hard.
thousands of people, and with the conviction, we
Yeah.
achieved it. It's one of the most
Mhm.
amazing things that happened in the history of the world. Are you kidding me? Think about 1969 technology. We were walking on the moon in 1960. A computer was like the size of a whole room,
I
not like
know.
something you have in your pocket or purse, right?
No,
And like
no, we have more
we didn't
now.
even have
Yeah.
microwave ovens,
No.
and yet we were walking on the surface of the moon. And so I'm showing them kind of the impossibility of what this goal, this vision was, and how having the courage and the conviction to go after their goals and to create a vision and to try to fulfill it. And like, listen, like,
Right.
if we could do that in 1969, what can't you do? That goal, that vision, that dream, you're not even reaching for it because it seems so far out. It pales in comparison to what we accomplished in 1969. Those obstacles that you think are standing in your way right now, they're nothing compared to what we overcame in 1969 with a goal, a vision, with conviction, with the courage to go after it. You can do the impossible, right? And so then you see kids going like, oh my God, like, wow. And like, you want them, again, I want them to walk out dazed. I want them to walk out like they've been, again, immersed into this outer space thing where this person has talked to them about changing their paradigm about how they look at the world and how they look at their fellow neighbor that they might have some differences and disagreements with, and with the idea that they can literally go out and accomplish what's seemingly impossible. And so that is a way of taking
That
something that's
is
like, how is someone going to teach the lunar landing? Well, a lunar landing can be a textbook,
okay.
it could be a textbook
It could
assignment,
be. Yes, it could.
or it could be life-changing.
Okay. So would you say, and I love what you're talking about because it's the why. Like, why are we talking about this? What, how does this affect me? And um that's what you're putting into this. So is that still that's still in the third circle of presentation? Like, it's actually because it's not just theater, it's actually this is why this is important. This is the impact that your learning is going to have. And I think what has happened maybe a little bit with BC education is we're asking students to self-assess with their core competencies. We call them just competencies, communication and personal social responsibilities. But they're sort of pulling from not a lot. And what I think I love about what I'm hearing you talk about is that you're actually teaching them how to think globally, but you're also teaching them that this is important and why it's important. Like it's not just asking them to figure it out themselves or think about it and, answer it on a quiz. It's you're actually overtly teaching it. I think that's important, and it might be
Yeah.
missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's always, it's one of the things I'm trying to focus on, is trying to really allow them to process it and to look at it in a way of how it's relevant to them, and to be
Yes.
reflective in that. And for example, I have, like, if I give them any sort of assignments, it's
Right.
usually self-reflective in nature, where I'm asking them to personalize what it is that we're learning and kind of reflect on it. Like, just as I'll give you like a random example.
Yeah.
Let's
Tell
say
me.
I'm teaching them about the shot heard round the world, which were
Okay.
the American colonists were facing off against the British Army, the most powerful army on earth at that time.
Right.
And this little ragtag group of poorly trained farmers and merchants are standing out there with their like muskets right in front of this most powerful army. And it was that shot was what started the Revolutionary War. Now, um, okay, so I do tell them all, I do want them to know the content standards
Hmm.
behind this. I do want them to know the
Absolutely.
curriculum and all of
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
But I want them to make it, I want them to, I want to say like, hey, listen, my questions are more like this, like, hey, uh, uh, these people were willing to die for this cause. They were willing to die. So, like, what do you think there are some causes that are worth dying for? Like, what might some of those causes be?
Oh,
And like, do you
yeah.
have something that you would be willing to die for? What might that be, right? And so now you see kids go like, oh my God, like willing to die. That's right.
But
They were
that's
like in
that's
front of,
profound. That is actually a
yeah,
profound question. And I would have
yeah,
eaten that up as a grade
yeah.
11 student. Are you
You,
kidding? We were never
you
asked
see,
questions like that.
yeah, you see a kid who openly, outwardly is very
Yeah.
apathetic about everything, about
Yes.
school, about everything like this. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, I would
Absolutely.
read his reflection, and
Yeah.
he'd say,
Oh.
you know what? I would die for my little sister. Like if someone was threatening my little sister, I would like put my life on the line to save her. Or and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
okay. And the other one says like, I would die for my faith, or maybe for their family, or I'm like,
Oh.
my mom has sacrificed everything for our family. Like I would, I would step in front of a bullet for my mom. And you're like, oh, wait a second. These kids that outwardly seem so apathetic, they actually care very deeply about some things, but we just don't tap into that in school, and we don't show them why this is, or how to like personalize these things.
We don't
Same.
know.
And so I mean, that's like I'll give you another random example.
Please.
And
Yeah.
it's same time period, and I'm a US history teacher, so I apologize for
I
US
know
history
I
examples.
love it that
Yeah,
that you're a high school teacher. I
yeah.
love this. Okay.
So we talk about the people that signed the Declaration of Independence.
Yes. Okay.
And well, basically, uh, this could be punishable by death,
Yes.
right? What they're doing. Um, and this is treason, what they're saying, and that which is punishable by death. And so we have this image of, say, the founding fathers, and we
Yes.
picture them with like their powder wigs
We do.
and their little ruffle outfits and like their big sleeves and stuff. And so to a modern kid, these people seem so outdated and so conservative and
Yes. So much.
nerdy and dork,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
look at them in their little wigs and stuff like that, right?
Canadian
I'm like, no,
history.
like, are you
Yeah.
kidding
Same
me?
thing.
Like these people, do you know
No.
how radical what these people were saying was? They were committing treason. They were putting their life on the line. Like they were saying, hey, because you are not treating us rightly, because you're not treating us right, so because you're not obeying and respecting our rights, our
Yeah.
natural rights as human beings,
Right.
we are actually not just going to break away from you, but we are willing to pick up guns and go and kill you. Like we're going to fight you. We're going to shoot. We're going to go out with our guns and kill you over these issues. And that's exactly what happened. It was a war, right? But yet kids today, they see the picture
I know.
and they're like, oh, look at these like old dudes. Are you kidding me?
I
These
know.
people are more radical than anyone you know. These people are more intense and more like rebellious against authority than anyone. Like you think that you're rebellious against police or authority or whatever it might be. Like, these kids that are in my class that are getting in trouble all the time, or whatever it might be like, okay, do you understand that England was the most powerful country on earth? And
Yeah.
these guys took guns and went and fought them? Like,
Actually, that's such a cool way to But it's so cool because now I'm really interested. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a second.
And so it's like all of a sudden now kids are like going like, oh,
Yeah.
well, let me hear more about this. Like
Yeah.
what happened? Like what happened?
Yes.
If they were so
Yes.
if they were so outnumbered by this powerful army, like how do they have any chances? And then I build up the underdog story. So like I have this thing like, what is it about human nature
Yeah.
that draws people in, and how can I add that in my content? Well, here's something that's about human nature.
Oh, I
This
love it.
Cinderella, like the
Yes.
Cinderella story, the underdog. People love the underdog,
Yes.
right?
That's
And
true.
so I position my Revolutionary War unit to emphasize the underdog nature. I would say things to them like, who did
Oh,
we think we were? Standing on the green in Lexington in front of these farmers and merchants, poorly trained, poorly equipped, in front of the most powerful army on earth. Nobody thought we could win. In fact, people mocked us. But then I tell the story of how we rose up and defeated them and became a country. I can get kids so fired up about this story because it's the underdog rising up and defeating the greater power, right?
oh, I
And so
love it.
like these are things that just draw people in by human nature. You want to hear the David versus Goliath story, right? You want to hear
Yes,
how
we
David slayed
do.
Goliath because
Yes.
that's engaging, that's powerful. And so like it's taking these elements from always looking around the world and saying, how can I use that? What is it going around the world around me? What is it in human nature about things that draw people in? And how can I embed and layer those things into my content to make it irresistible to kids?
It's amazing because it is presentation, yet it's much more, it's not surface. It's actually providing such depth and just with all of the themes and the way that you say that you access the themes in human nature, what we're drawn to and what we're interested in is wonderfully cinematic, I should say. Like it's just so beautiful, and kids love cinema too, right? So I think
Mhm.
that that's a really nice way to approach that. So what about theater? Did you do any
Oh,
theater?
so I was not formally trained in theater, but I do have a background in various things. Like was a professional magician for a while, and so practicing. I was a street performer.
I kind of
Yeah,
wondered about that. I just wondered. I thought,
yeah. I have a little bit
okay,
of a street performing background. I have a little bit of
okay,
a
I can see
magic
that.
magic performance background,
Oh, I
and
love
so
it.
actually, Teach Like a Pirate is a very strange book, Jen. I'll tell you something strange about it. There's
Okay.
not a single, there's not one single education book reference inside of it. Not a single one. And it's not because
Okay.
I don't like education books. I publish over
No.
200. It's because that's not where it came from. It was from the outside drawn in. It was my background as a magician, my
Oh, yeah.
background as a coach, my background as a marketer and entrepreneur. Like all these things came together to create my particular teaching style.
But
But then I always
there's,
tell people, teach like a pirate is not
yeah.
about teaching like me. It's about taking your strengths, your talents, and your
Yes.
voice, and then weaving it together with some of these human nature ideas that engage human beings, and tying that all together to create the best you.
Well, it's leveraging really excellent presentation methods as well. Like, but
Yep.
that's amazing because I'm already sold. Like I'm thinking of a couple of things that I'm going to try this year already just talking to you, and I haven't even read your book. So I'm really grateful for that. And you hooked me. So I'm loving it. If you were to, um, other than your book, because I'll share the link below for how to get a hold of Dave's book. But if you were to share with our audience a way to get started, a way to sort of learn some tips, tricks, techniques to bring into the classroom for us in September, what would you recommend and why, I guess?
Yeah. So one of my things to starting the school year is that you need to start with the classroom culture.
Hmm.
And so you cannot teach like a pirate with a classroom that is not psychologically safe, where people don't feel comfortable, where people don't feel welcome and like they belong. So that culture of belonging, that psychological safety, that relationship building. Sometimes people focus on relationship building because they say that's what everyone says. It's cliche. Some things are cliche for a reason. The reason that everyone
True.
says them is because
It's true.
it's
And
so true.
I
right?
know.
And so I am much more concerned about the culture of my classroom and the psychological safety of my classroom at the beginning of the year. And I know that that's going to make us much more be able to learn much more efficiently over the course and effectively over the course of the year. And so that's always my beginning focus.
Right.
Um, and then the other thing I would say, I mentioned a question earlier that I always ask and ask teachers to ask themselves is, how can I use that? What is going on?
Right.
What do you see going
Yep.
around in the world around you?
Yep.
How can I use that and layer that into my classroom? As an example, the big thing that just finished, for example, is the Olympics. Everyone is following the
Yes.
Olympics, and
Yep.
so like if people know some of those storylines, people know some of those themes, and so that would be example of like if the Olympics, if I'm teaching, like a lot of schools are already going here in the United States. Like if I was teaching during the Olympics, I would
Yes.
absolutely be incorporating Olympic storylines and themes and memes and different things that are happening during the Olympics in my presentation. Uh, what is going on around? Look, always look, combing through current events, combing through everything that's happening, and saying, how can I use that?
I think that's amazing. I know, and as you're talking, I'm just trying to make connections of when I've done that and when I haven't, and I should have. So what share do you have, Dave, for all of us that we're going to link in the video description? I'm so excited
Absolutely.
about
So
this.
hopefully your listeners will love this. We have something called DBC, Dave Burgess Consulting, DBC University, where we have some digital courses. And one of our courses, we're going to give you a link to, you'll be able to access that course for free. And it is all about, there's maybe 6 or 7 different DBC authors, including myself. And we do a short presentation. Each of us do our own little
Love
module of
it.
some different activity or way to open the school year.
Oh, wow.
Some of these activities could be done at any point during the school year, but a lot of them really are designed to be kind of first week of school type of activities, including
Perfect.
mine, which is what I explain what I do on my very first day of school, which I call the Play-Doh lesson. And so I do a full description of the Play-Doh lesson that I use in my classroom. I used it for 17 years. And so I've seen it work with kids. That's in there. But then there's 5 or 6 other authors in addition to that showing some
Wow.
early beginning of the school year activities and how they can incorporate that in the classroom. It's totally free, and they
Oh,
can
wow,
access it,
Dave.
download it,
That's
and use it.
amazing. Are you kidding? That is so great because it just gives us that little bit to get started, to get some momentum. Like I said, the whole point of this is to offer teachers momentum with outstanding educators like you, Dave. I wish you could have been my history teacher. Never would happen, but I wish I could have had that because I
Thank you.
was fascinated, really fascinated with history and did an after degree in that, but it was never presented that way. And I think I would have really enjoyed it had it been. And I just wanted to close with just how grateful we are that you're taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule. You're flying all over the place and numerous engagements. I don't think you stop ever, do you? Except to run, like, or,
August is the busiest, but yeah, but
oh,
yeah,
so busy.
that
And
back
you
to school period is my
I
busiest time.
know. And thank you so much for doing this. And the fact that you are a teacher and at heart, and that's your passion. So it's the third circle of presentation. That's your greatest hit. And I will
Yep.
never forget that. And thank you very much. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to listen to Dave Burgess' greatest hit. In the link in the video description, you've got access to free back to school lessons and ideas for lessons and activities from 5 authors in the Dave Burgess Consulting um,
Publishing
Incorporated.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, publishing family and
Yeah.
lucky, innovative educators to work with you. Thanks, Dave, for everything you do for kids and for educators.
Jen, thank you so much for having me on the show. I had a blast.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, Dave.